Tonight, feeding the homeless might get you into trouble, what the ATF is doing with airsoft guns, rainbow trout, plus a whole lot more. All coming up tonight on Free Minds TV.
And welcome to a brand new edition of Free Minds TV, where we challenge you, the viewer, to think outside the box. It is episode 148, and as always, it is Toby here with you.
And Nick.
All right, Nick, we have got a lot to get to from news stories from around the country and from around the world. We'll be going over to the UK, picking on them because they're doing some very silly stuff as always, having to do with treasure, of all things.
They're good for that.
Oh yeah, I've never heard one about treasure in the nanny state, but we'll be getting into that. What could happen to you if you find some treasure in the UK, and it's not necessarily a good thing. It's pretty silly, actually. But first, we wanted to focus in on a few stories happening right here in the United States, where we're broadcasting from. Starting off with talking about the ATF, and I don't know, they've got some kind of a grudge against these airsoft guns. They're the BB guns that shoot plastic BBs. They've really become popular lately. But the ATF at least doesn't like certain kinds, I guess.
Yeah, and this story is actually coming out of Oregon. And what the ATF is doing is they're seizing airsoft guns, which, as you said, Toby, they're BB guns, essentially, that shoot 6mm plastic pellets. And they're used in much the same way that people use paintball guns. It is meant to be shot at other people, basically to simulate combat in a sporting environment. But they don't really carry all that much energy. I've been shot with them before. It's not like it breaks your skin or incapacitates you or anything. It's really just a toy gun that's used in a game when you're playing like you're at war. And a business owner in Washington was not too happy after a shipment of 30 airsoft guns for his store was confiscated by ATF agents in Tacoma. The business owner was Bob Martin, who runs the business along with his son Ben. And the ATF seized these 30 guns, they're airsoft guns, so they're basically toys, valued at around $12,000. So they are fairly expensive toys. Special Agent Kelvin Crenshaw from the ATF said the toys can be easily retrofitted into dangerous weapons. Quote, with minimal work, it could be converted to a machine gun.
It shoots bullets.
Crenshaw said.
Real bullets?
Yeah.
Shoot a machine gun that's going to shoot bullets from this toy.
Yeah, again, that was Special Agent Kelvin Crenshaw,
yes,
who is
special.
Either a really bad liar or he knows nothing
agent.
about guns, which makes you wonder, why are you working for the ATF, Mr. Kelvin Crenshaw?
Maybe he focuses on the alcohol and tobacco part, and he doesn't really know what's
You'd have to be pretty ignorant about guns to think that you could retrofit an airsoft gun into a functional firearm. They're not designed at all. The airsoft gun's internal components are designed to move tiny 6mm BBs, round plastic pellets.
Yes.
They don't have a firing pin.
No.
I mean,
you might as well start from scratch.
Many of them are made from plastic.
Hilarious.
Some do have metal parts, but it's no more useful in making a weapon. And the steel's not even going to be of ballistics grade. It's absurd. It would explode in your face.
Yes, and
I mean, you'd be better off starting from scratch than trying to retrofit something out of an airsoft gun. You could do it in less time and more quickly. It wouldn't be that hard to build a gun in a machine shop. It really is not. A lot of people do build their own guns, but to make one out of an airsoft gun, that makes about as much sense as making one out of a pop gun that uses a cork.
This is very silly. I mean, this is an isolated incident. As far as I know, this is the only one we've seen. Maybe this is a new trend that we're going to be seeing with the ATF seizing and disposing of or confiscating airsoft toys. I'm going to go along and call them airsoft toys, Nick, because that's what they are. They're toys. And I want to make that distinction really for the sake of the people who are hearing this and don't know what an airsoft gun is. So airsoft toys, the ATF may be starting to confiscate these. I hope it's not a trend. I mean, maybe I'm hoping it's just this one very special agent. And I know at the end of that article it also said that there was something else horribly wrong with these toys. This was what I found disturbing. I mean, not making it out of a machine gun, even though that's silly. But the part that really is scary, and the ATF is helping us out with this, is the painting on them.
Yes, they didn't have orange tips on them, which apparently is an import requirement. Of course, and I've heard this before, too. Would that be a customs
issue, not an ATF issue?
You would think so, because they're importing these from Taiwan.
Not to mention that it's a very, very silly silly law. But I mean,
yeah, but here's the thing: is that in many cases, importers who do bring in airsoft guns will do this. They'll bring them in with the orange tips, but nobody wants an orange tip on them
Just
because they
paint
cost
it over.
$400 a piece. They want to look well. They sell attachments that you just screw on. For instance, on the M16s, the flash hider, the flash suppressor, it's screw on and it's made of plastic. It's orange, so you just unscrew that and put on the $3 plastic piece.
well,
that's
Nick,
black that
what
you
we
bought
need is we need a
separately.
law that bans and prohibits purchasing and the sale of these black plastic things. And while we're at it, we should ban any paint that might resemble it as well. It's silly. It's just very, very silly article. You silly, silly special agent. What was his name? Ken Moore Special.
Kelvin.
Kelvin.
Kelvin
I know it was
Crenshaw.
Kelvin Crenshaw.
It's just,
You
I mean,
silly,
it's just,
silly man.
it's an absurd statement. Anybody who's even has any familiarity with guns would know that it's absurd.
Not to
It'd be
mention-
like saying
I
I'm
mean-
going to make a gun out of my notes here.
Yes. Well,
I'm going to retrofit these into a dangerous weapon.
maybe spitballs.
I mean, that's about it. It's just, it's absurd.
Well, that's what
And
the government's doing.
your
I
tax
mean,
dollars are going
in
to
a
that.
recession where people are really losing their homes every day, people standing around looking for food. Can't work for it, Nick. This is what the federal government's wasting.
Yeah, and they're
their
going to try
dollars
to
with.
destroy these
Yeah.
airsoft guns too, apparently.
Oh, good.
Now we're all safer
Yeah, and
because
this
they
guy's
destroyed a
out
shipment of
$12,000.
30 plastic toy rifles.
And this guy's now having to figure out how to feed his family. Maybe he's going to be going on the old unemployment, or maybe he's going to be among this next group of people, the homeless. And that's what we're going to move into now, because while the federal government is really focusing its energy on making sure that tax dollars are going towards putting businesses out of business, they're also, at the same time, working on making sure that those homeless people can't get a free bite to eat. Yes, this coming from Miami, Fox News reporting that the Miami City Commission is set to consider a proposal next month that would prohibit unauthorized people and groups from feeding of the homeless downtown, an ordinance that proponents say will cut down on litter and ensure the safety of the food the homeless eat. Yes, they are worried about the homeless safety here, folks. They said it right there in the first paragraph. They're worried about the safety of the homeless, and if they're just getting food from anybody off the street, they could be eating poisoned food. So we must protect the homeless, and of course the litter and such too. Now, Nick, nobody likes a whole gaggle of homeless flooding into town to just start feeding off the people and taking up food and begging on the streets. I mean, a few are okay. That's what we have in Keene. But we wouldn't want it if there were like 10,000 here. I mean, the South Park did a thing about this, and there's been multiple stories about certain cities that are more friendly to the homeless, attracting huge populations of them. But I think a bill like this is going way beyond this, and it's saying that one free person cannot feed another free person. And of course, unless they
Well,
are.
you're presuming that we're free people.
Of course,
That's a bit
they're
of a
properly trained. I mean, this.
And the safety argument is pretty absurd when you consider that the homeless, where are they living? They're living. Some
They're
of them might
eating
be
out of the goddamn garbage.
and some of them might be in shelters, but a lot of homeless people, they're living under an underpass. And not to paint them with too broad of a brush, but a lot of the homeless have either mental health issues or drug dependence issues. So when you're,
Well, at least half of them.
yeah, I mean, when you're smoking crack and passing out in a dumpster somewhere.
Oh crap! That donut might have mold on it.
Yeah, I mean, is it reasonable to think that the threat to the homeless is the people who are trying to feed them, or is it perhaps everything else about their lifestyle that's more
They're
dangerous?
smelly. They litter. They yell
Well, yeah,
belligerent
hygiene
things.
problems,
They look crazy
lack of
some of the
medical
time.
care.
They are crazy some of the time. And no one wants to get stabbed with an old rusty hobo stick. But
Yeah, I mean,
But the
it's-
principle here, Nick, is you're saying one
You
free
can't
person
feed-
cannot feed another supposedly free person. The other issue that I have with this is who's to say whether or not they're homeless? Is it legal for me to give you a donut if you own a home or you have residence somewhere? Is that legal? Or is that going to be a punishable offense too? Am I going to be
Well,
getting
and
in
then-
trouble for feeding someone who's not
Right,
homeless?
and
what if, I mean,
then
what
you
if
get into an area where you're essentially making a distinction between people who own property and people who don't.
You're
And
the lowly
saying-
class. You can't
Right.
get my free donuts. I bought donuts for everyone who, first 12 people who pass on this block, I'm giving out free donuts. But if you don't own a house, you don't get a free donut. I mean, yes, that's silly, but that's the conclusion that we're drawing from this, and that's what it means. I mean, there's also people, I've had this instance before. I was in Boston a couple years back, and there was a homeless man. He walked up to me, and I'm hungry, man. I'm hungry. Give me some food, some money. I'm hungry. It's like, well, you're not hungry, or you stink of alcohol, and you probably ran out, and you want to go get some more alcohol. And while I can't blame you, it's -3 degrees outside, and it's the middle of January. You say you're hungry, let's prove that you're hungry, let's go to Domino's, I'll buy you some food. Is that illegal now, Nick? I bought the man some food, I gave free food to the man.
That's the thing, is a lot of people don't want to give money to the homeless because many of the homeless do have
But I'd be willing to give him some food.
Right, but I'll give him food because I know he's actually getting fed, and I know the $5 I give him isn't going to buy a crack rock or a bottle of whiskey.
Right. Can't do that, though. I don't know, it just seems silly to me. I mean, I get the point in the legislation because no one wants 1 million homeless people all flocking the area, throwing their trash everywhere and making a mess. But at the same time, they're people. And while they might not be watching this, Nick, because they're homeless.
There might be some homeless people watching us if we're on in a bar or something.
Well, then they're not
or
homeless.
Shelter?
They've got a shelter over their head, right? A bar.
You can be, if you're in a shelter, you're homeless.
Can you have your address be a bar? What? Well, you're in a shelter. You have a home over your head. See, that goes with what makes someone homeless, Nick.
Well,
What does make someone?
question.
What if you own land and you put up a tent? Are you homeless? Can now I give you my free donuts because now you own land and you have a tent? It's a structure that
I
you're
wouldn't
under.
call that homeless.
You wouldn't call it because you own the land. But if you're under the bridge in a tent, you're homeless, right? Silly.
It is silly. It's a silly distinction, and I think it's going too far. But yeah, I can understand why people don't want the streets crowded with homeless people.
Okay.
But I still think you should be able to feed the homeless if you want to.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
And if you don't want to, don't feed them.
No. I mean, it's kind of like you put out the analogies. You're going to be putting out a saucer of milk every day for the stray cat. Well, the stray cat's eventually going to become your cat.
Yeah,
I guess that's the same analogy these people are using to say don't feed these homeless people. Oh, it's not too bad. This is only in Miami, and there are actually places around the United States that they have outlawed feeding the homeless. I want to throw that out there, but this is only this article that we're talking about it for is coming out of Miami.
Sorry, it just sounds like when they tell you not to feed the bears.
Don't feed the bears. They
Or
might
the
poke
zoo
you with their
animals.
rusty
I mean,
hobo stick.
I mean, it seems like...
They say that anyone who breaks the law will first be given a warning, those kind, benevolent overlords, and then fined $300 for the second offense. Well, and of course, if you don't pay that, you'll go to jail.
And what if it's a church doing this?
Well, that's
They're
really...
going to fine churches?
That's who they're really targeting on this. It's not the individual they're really going after. They're going after for people like in the video that's up on the screen, who are going up and setting up a line of soups and stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, you've got people, whether they're Christians or Muslims, do have certain dogmas that say that you should help the poor and the unfortunate.
Freedom of religion, man.
You're going to say you can't help the less fortunate because we think they're unsightly.
So
you can't actually practice your religion and be charitable.
So based on this, a home person, someone who owns a homeowner or a renter, can not feed a homeless person.
Can a homeless person?
But can a homeless person feed a homeowner? Or can a homeless person...
I don't know why they'd want to, but...
Can a homeless person feed another homeless person? That's why it's so silly about this, Nick. All right, moving right along. I don't live in Miami. I live in New Hampshire. Cold's keeping most homeless people away. Only the hardy ones survive. But moving right along to stuff that does affect us on the federal level with a Downsizer Dispatch. Do we have one this week, Nick?
No, we don't.
I certainly hope we have a Downsizer Dispatch this week, Nick, because I plug it. You should just go with the regular Read the Bills Act or something. Because go for it.
All right, well, we've done this a few times before. I don't really have any particular piece of legislation to plug because, honestly, I was in a rush today and I didn't really actually read the Downsizer Dispatch for the last couple days. So go to downsizedc.org if you're somebody who believes that the federal government is too big and you would like to see it at least trimmed back in size, or if you just want to stop the growth in government. If you think government is growing too fast and you think, you know what, this is enough, you should probably go to downsizedc.org and support pieces of legislation, proposed legislation, like the Read the Bills Act, which pretty basically requires Congress to read or have read to them pieces of legislation before they vote on it to enact it into law. So if they want to make a law and expect the rest of us to follow it under the penalty of jail time or fines, they should at least know what they're voting on. That seems like a pretty common sense proposal. And it would drastically cut back the amount of legislation they pass because they don't have time to read it all right now. That's why they really don't read most of it. That's the Read the Bills Act, and the other one is the Write the Laws Act. There's a lot of unelected bureaucrats out there who basically legislate for us. I know they taught us in civics class that Congress makes the laws and then the president can veto them and the Congress can override a veto, and that's how laws are made. But it's just not true. Without any constitutional authority to do so, Congress has just handed over lawmaking powers to organizations like the ATF, which we were just talking about. The ATF writes a lot of regulations that have the force of law. You can go to jail if you violate them, but those things never become law. The gun rules that they make never become law through an act of Congress. It's just because the ATF makes up the rules. So you're being represented by unelected bureaucrats when it's really your representatives who should be passing the laws that you have to follow. Go to downsizedc.org and check it out.
All right, Nick, sounds like a good plan. And if you, the viewer, would like this show to be more professional and us to get our show content in order beforehand, you can always send us a donation. freemindsmedia.org is the web address. If you send us enough money, we'll put more time into our show content and won't do it as we go along here. And I'll know that Nick doesn't have a Downsizer Dispatch before I tell him get into the Downsizer Dispatch. So log on to freemindsmedia.org. Send us a donation today. If you send $3 a month or $30 a year, Nick, that'll get you access to the members page where there's hundreds of hours of bonus content, not only on the video side, but the radio side too. So help us out, become more professional, and really support the show. 148 episodes, Nick. Do 148 more if I was paid to do it. So help us out, freemindsmedia.org. All right, when we come back, we are going to be getting into treasure, Nick. Treasure.
You like that word.
Treasure and silliness in the UK as well as fish here in the US. Trout, I think, right?
Rainbow trout.
Rainbow trout, to be specific. We'll tell you what that means when we come back right here on Free Minds TV.
Hi, I'm Ian Freeman from Free Talk Live and FreeKeen.com, and you're watching Free Minds TV.
And welcome back to Free Minds TV. It is Toby here with you.
And Nick.
All right, Nick, we already did the plug for our website, right? We did that right before the break, so we don't need to do it right now?
Exactly.
All right, so we'll just jump right into the articles, Nick. Every week I've got to do something to pick on the UK, because they're silly people in the UK. They have even more love for government than people in the United States.
They have, a lot of the laws they have are silly. The people seem to put up with it, but that's the case here too. To be fair, Americans put up with a lot of other laws that they don't have in the UK.
But they're even worse, Nick.
They are a lot worse.
Makes me feel better
Their
about
government's
myself.
a lot worse.
Makes me feel better about the laws I have to live under if I can point to
I
them
don't know if
and
it's
say
really
theirs are worse.
because of anything we do as Americans that makes us better, though. It might just be that we're fortunate to have been born in a country like the U.S. where there's a constitution and things. Just the luck of where you're born.
Get into everything that makes sense, Nick. I just say those silly, foolish people in the United Kingdom always making silly, silly laws. And one of them is called, wait, I've got it here, something how to do with treasure. The Treasure Act, in fact. The Treasure Act is one of those silly laws that those silly people in the UK have passed, which deems that you have to report any treasure found to the government. Actually, they say the coroner. I'm guessing, though, in the UK that's some sort of government man who likes to inspect treasure. This article.
Coroner?
Yeah, that's
Here
what they
that
say.
means you inspect dead people.
Well, over there, I'm thinking maybe treasure is an old dead person. Anyways, let's get into the article. Kate Harding, a 23-year-old who lives in the United Kingdom, found some treasure. About 14 years ago, when she was out with her mother doing the garden. She found an old piece of treasure, about 700-year-old coin of sorts, that used to belong to old Charles IV, and according to this article anyways, and she decided to hold on to it for a number of years. Well, last year, she decided to take it to a museum and have it appraised. Well, the appraiser advised her that under the Treasure Act, she should probably report it to the coroner. Once again, I'm not really sure what the coroner has to do with this, but he wants to inspect the treasure. She kind of put it in the back of her mind, but then she got mail and demands to appear in court to explain her reasonings on finding something and keeping it. No finders keepers in England. Charles IV wants his treasure back. And while they could have put her in jail for up to 3 months, Nick, and fined her up to £300, they were much better. They simply convicted her and gave her a £25 fee along with a conditional discharge. And if she finds any more treasure, she is to report it.
It's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. I mean, the person who would have had to have died would be dead for 7
Well,
centuries.
that's the point. Okay, I can see if you're finding a sack of 25 grand on the side of the road, reporting that because someone might have lost it, right? Or a wallet or
In
something.
recently issued currency.
But this is a treasure act, meaning whoever lost the treasure is long gone. Long gone, Nick. The government just wants their share.
Yeah.
It's silly. It's so silly, the treasure act.
Came from the ground. I mean, I guess they can try to make the argument that the crown issued currency and it was the king's money and the monarchy is still there. They can make that argument. Doesn't make it any better, though.
Mm-hmm. I don't know what the definition for treasure is, how old it is, but wouldn't that kind of be like saying, well, the current, what do they have over there? They have pounds over there. The pound piece has the queen's face on it, and now it's the queen. So you got to report that you got a pound and bring it to the queen. It's hers.
I don't know.
Isn't that almost the same thing?
Just about. I mean,
like-
I don't know if the Treasure Act only applies to coins or if it applies
Yeah, well-
to other valuable things that you find, like, I mean, old weapons. Anything older than, 500 years old probably has some collectible value. It's pretty
Yeah.
rare to find things that are that old.
Now, I want to be completely fair here and be honest about this article. It's not actually some money she found, a coin, while it's in coin shape. It's called a silver petafort. I don't know what that means. It's they're not really sure what it was for, but it was one of those commemoration pieces. We have commemorative dollars that you don't really spend. So it
What
wasn't
difference
money.
does that make?
I don't know.
It's a piece of precious metal with the king's face stamped in it.
I don't know if it even has his face, but it was
But
Charles
it was a coin.
IV.
It was a piece of metal.
Coin shape, not necessarily for spending though, Nick. For treasuring, to bury in gardens, to be dug up and get people in trouble down the line. Now, yes, she only had to pay £25 fee. She looks very upset in her photos, Nick. She's
Well, you do have to go through the whole process. I mean, it's a pain in the butt.
The coin is worth about £2,000, and she now has a criminal record, Nick, for violating the Treasures Act. And I do believe that she's also the only person who's ever been tried under the Treasures Act.
I mean, this is a misdemeanor. Here in the I don't know what they call it in the United Kingdom, but this would be a misdemeanor offense in the U.S. if it's punishable by jail time.
Yeah.
It's more than just a violation where you
Oh
face
yeah,
a fine.
she's got a criminal record, Nick.
So
She's a criminal.
I
Good
don't-
luck applying for jobs now, you treasure fiend.
I'm not
I
sure.
hope you pay.
I'm not sure that businesses really care about you violating the Treasure Act.
I care, Nick. I wouldn't hire her in a minute. She's not reporting treasure. What if she's on my property and she finds some treasure and doesn't report it to the government? I'd be outraged. Outraged, Nick. All right, let's move right along. Let's come back. We're doing silly things all the time in the United States, too. It's not just those silly people in the UK. We're just as silly here in the United States. It seems to me people almost are getting the government they deserve. At least it's for the people, by the people. And what have the people been doing anyways? At least those elected officials in government. Having to do with the trout, the rainbow ones to be specific.
Well, this is just kind of an article I stumbled across online talking about the history of the rainbow trout, mostly in America. And one thing that you may not know, because I didn't really know this until maybe a year or two ago, is that the rainbow trout, it's not really native to anywhere but the West Coast, anywhere west of the Rockies. Everywhere else in the continent, well, it's been introduced pretty much exclusively by government, whether it's at a state or provincial or federal level. Governments like to introduce this fish because people like to fish for it. So they get to sell a lot more fishing licenses and make a lot more money. In fact, for each of the roughly 4 million people born in the United States every year, state and federal hatcheries stock about 20 rainbow trout in the nation's streams and ponds and things like that. So you're talking about 80 million trout every year stocked by various government agencies. Now, granted, in most places, this isn't being paid for by taxpayer dollars. It's just being paid for by everybody who pays for a fishing license. And it's actually pretty bad for streams in some cases. In fact, at one point, the U.S. federal government decided to poison, I believe it was the Green River in Utah, by pouring lots and lots of fish poison into it. Basically, I think it's called pesticide, which means
Hisses away the fish, right?
it's instead of pesticide, that just means fish killing material. And they killed a whole lot of fish. Yes, it was a Green River. They killed a whole lot of fish up the stream, and then the National Park Service got angry at them because lots and lots of dead fish started to wash into Dinosaur National Monument Park.
Why'd they do pesticide in the water just because that's what rainbow fish wanted?
No, they killed off all the trash fish and then stocked it with rainbow trout.
Why not leave the trash fish and make them compete with the rainbow fish?
Because people would rather fish for rainbow trout.
You know, Nick.
And see, this is the thing, is that if I decided I wanted to poison the Green River to kill off all the native fish and then stock it with a foreign fish species.
Salamanders, Nick. Stock it with salamanders.
You would probably look at me like I was insane, and then
Sharks.
The government would arrest me if they found out about it.
Stock it with sharks. Let's kill all the fish and stock all the streams and rivers with sharks.
This is the thing. When a Fish and Game Department or U.S. Fish and Wildlife decides to introduce an invasive species or kill off a whole ecosystem because, well, they think it's better that way, they get away with it. I mean, the article goes on. It's actually a plug for this book, An Entirely Synthetic Fish, which is about rainbow trout, if you're fascinated by the subject. I just thought I should give that a plug because that's where I'm pulling this show prep from.
Burglar.
And they actually, the state of California dropped rainbow trout into remote ponds from airplanes.
That is awesome. You know, Nick, I have one thing to complain about that sort of goes along with this article, and it has to do with the stalking and the paying of the fees. You mentioned that the people who pay for this stalking and these invasive trouts, which are pretty tasty.
I like rainbow trout.
The people who are paying for them are the people who buy fishing licenses to have a license to go fishing. If you don't, they give you a big old fine, take all your tackle and stuff. I am a human being, Nick, who enjoys fishing. I don't like to catch fish. I just enjoy the sport of fishing. In fact, when I go fishing, I don't even put bait on the line because catching of the fish is not what's exciting to me. I just enjoy being out there with my fishing pole.
See, I've never entirely understood why people do that.
If I ever did catch a fish, I'd be horrified. I wouldn't know what to do, and I'd probably have to have someone else find it and throw it back. Well, I have, and I've had to have other people take it off the hook and throw it back. I don't like that. I don't know.
Just grab them and...
Hey, Nick! My point is, I got to pay my fishing license, even though I'm not going to catch any fish. And if I do catch my fish, I'm going to throw them right back in anyways. I should be exempt.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, is, I mean, they'll say that the money that you pay for your licenses goes for conservation purposes. Well,
and restocking of the fish.
Right, but this is a non-native species. Yeah. It's not really conservation. This is just they're dumping farm-raised fish into the rivers, and then you're fishing them out. What if I don't want to fish for trout? What if I want to fish for a naturally occurring fish? What if I want to fish for those little pumpkin seeds?
Starfish. Yeah. Sunfish, no. Sunfish,
Sunfish,
right?
whatever the proper term for them is. What if I want to fish for so-called trash fish species that just live in the water because, well, that's the ecosystem they naturally occur in? And Fish and Game doesn't spend a cent on maintaining that population. Well, I still have to pay for a license.
I have the answer for you. You're a silly man, Nick, and the government knows best. And that's going to do it for us. We're out of time for this week. If you have different thoughts, we'd love to hear them. Agree, disagree, completely confused. fmtv@freemindsmedia.org is the email address. freemindstv.com or .org is the web address where you can also find contact info, ways to help the show, money, 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 money. Give us your money, and a whole lot more, all up at freemindsmedia.org. Until next week, it's been Toby here with you.
And Nick.
Have a good one.